Welcome to Women Investor Wednesday. Amy Shick, how are you?
I'm doing well, Beth. How are you?
I'm so happy to meet you. And now we've decided, or we've found out that we have a mutual dear friend, Lauren Roethlisberger.
Yes, I love it. I love it when the world gets small like this and connections, or just happen naturally this way. So I love it.
I met Lauren on Twitter, and then we met at a Twitter meetup in Fort Worth. And then I asked her to speak at my conference last year, and she's speaking again this year. So, and she's been on this podcast. So, and I've been to her house. So
yes, I love it.
It's amazing. You know, you can meet someone on a social app and then go to their house, right? And meet them in real life.
Yes, I love that. I love that. Yes, I've known Lauren for years. We are very close. We talk all the time. We've had business ventures together. We've supported each other through investments. And also, I've learned so much from Lauren. She's just such a wealth of knowledge. And she's also sometimes a life coach for me, right? That's how friends are, right?
Well, and you guys have a lot in common because of the military.
Yes.
Right.
And that's how we met. Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you and you've served?
No. Oh, no. The Army would not want me. I don't follow directions well.
Okay. So your husband?
Yes, my husband serves.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Well, actually, all of the families of military serve, right? Not just the person who's actually doing the serving.
Well, I definitely say we don't serve, but we support, which sometimes means following off to places that you don't want to go to.
Well, I on behalf of my following here on the podcast, thank you and your family and your husband for serving.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
So why I'm doing this podcast, Amy, is I found out, I think it's now 6 years ago, I came across some stats that said of all of the commercial real estate investors in the US, only 3% were women. That blew my mind. And then it went deeper and it said of the 3%, half of those were spouses or inherited.
Which makes sense, right? Which means that it's even a smaller percentage of people discovering it and getting into it.
Exactly. So I started interviewing women friends of mine who were not investors, but had said to me that they were interested in doing it. And I started saying, well, why don't you do it? Why aren't you investing yet? And many of these women that are in my circles are in the business. Like they're underwriters for a large commercial real estate firm. They work for a REIT. They're real estate lawyers. And I'm like, this is legal insider trading. You see what's going on. Why aren't you doing it? And and they said, well, first of all, it's too risky. And I go, well, do you invest your money at all? Oh, yes. Well, where do you invest it? Oh, the stock market. Okay, well, that's not risky. My Netflix stock dropped 80% last year, but that's not risky. Yeah. And then they said, well, it's too complicated. And I threw that back at them. Stock market. I don't understand the stock market.
Oh, I know.
So actually, it finally came down to, they said, which this made sense to me, I don't know any other women doing it. And I said, well, that makes sense because of the 3%. But I said, this is a problem I think I can solve. And this is during COVID. I said, let me put together a virtual summit where I'm going to put all my female friends who are investors on panels. I'm going to interview them so that I can start exposing the women that don't know anyone that's doing it to the women that are doing it.
For sure. I love that.
And that did really well. We had about 100 women. And basically I just, like what I'm going to do with you, just interview the women. How'd you get started? How'd you overcome the fear, all this stuff. And then since then we've had 3 in-person conferences where we have 200 to 300 women in the room. I like Lauren, interview them on stage. And then they go into the speakers that I interview, they go into breakout sessions where they'll show an underwriting of a deal, like a deeper dive. So if someone's interested in self-storage or industrial or retail, they can then follow that speaker that's on the main stage into a breakout session and get further information. So yes, so that's how I'm trying to change that 3%, one woman at a time.
I love it. I love it because I feel like it is truly how you learn is you find someone who is doing it and then you learn from them.
Yeah.
And I think the world is changing in that people are more giving with their information and they are, there's just so much more mentorship, I feel like today than there ever has been. And I feel like, especially for women, right? I feel like that a lot of the mentorship when it came to investing or real estate, career wise, even just finance, was definitely male dominated. And I see that in the lending business, it is very male dominated. But I feel like we are seeing women saying, I can do this and I can help someone else do it too. So,
yeah, definitely. When I started 39 years ago, when I was 2, just kidding. There were women that gatekeeped, because back then there was very few women in the industry. There were almost no women investing, but just in the industry. And there was not an abundance of sharing, because they felt that if there's only going to be a few of us, we don't want the competition. But that has definitely changed. I've been working on changing that for probably 35 years of my career. And whether it's through the podcast or the conferences, getting the word out that yes, there are more women than you think investing, probably the woman down the street. We just don't talk about it, right? We don't talk about money. We don't talk about what we're doing. And I was just at a conference in Lake Tahoe 2 days ago that Globe Street put on, Women of Influence. And I said, start talking about money.
Right?
The guys are doing it. We need to do it.
Yes. And I do feel like it is changing. I definitely think that there's more of an abundance mindset these days than, even 15 and 20 years ago.
For sure.
And I talk about money, and I feel like the younger generation of women, I've got a daughter that's 22 and a daughter that's 16, and they talk about money more, but I do think it is part of like my generation where it's still lingering in that women weren't supposed to talk about money. Like, it's uncomfortable. It's braggy. It's
right.
And I kind of feel like money makes the world go round.
You can imagine what it was in my generation. Holy smokes. So, all right. So let's tell the audience about Amy. Okay. So you're currently, you do mortgages. Are you a mortgage broker?
Yeah. So I'm a loan officer for a direct lender in University Place, Washington.
Okay. Awesome. And how long have you been doing that?
A little over a year. So I've definitely reinvented myself several times, and I'm 48 and I'm still reinventing myself. These military moves obviously create opportunities for me to reinvent myself. And so I've had a fantastic first year. It's been a wild ride so far.
So what did you do before that?
Oh goodness, I am the Jane of all trades.
Okay, I love it, love it.
So the thing that I've done the most for the longest time throughout, 30 years of being married and 18 moves has been real estate. And what inspired me to get into real estate was my grandmother lived in a smaller house behind our house to be close to family. And when I would check the mail, there would be checks for my grandmother, just checks. And I would take them back to my grandmother and deliver her mail, and she'd open them up. And these were all checks from her tenants. They would drop them off in our mailbox. And I thought, I want to do that.
Right.
I want checks to come to me. And then there would be times I would be with my grandmother, and we would stop at her rentals to check on things. And my grandmother would check on a leaky faucet, or she would check on a leak, or, check on a yard that, needed maintenance. And I just kind of thought, wow, we're going to all these houses and just checking on them and talking
How
to
did
people.
is she still around?
No, unfortunately,
Oh,
she's
I wanted
not.
to interview her.
Right? Oh my gosh, no. At one point, she had 45 rental properties
How did she
throughout the
even get
San
started?
Francisco Bay Area. She became a realtor.
Oh,
She
there you
became
go.
a realtor and
She had
just started
insider
acquiring.
trading, didn't she, Amy? She
Yes,
had insider
yes,
trading.
yes. And I mean, again, when you're in this market, you find different opportunities because you're in it. And then she would just use what she called other people's money, OPM.
Amazing.
And, she had a lender and and back then it was a little different, right?
Right. Here,
But
probably a few
yeah, she just kept acquiring and then rented them out and managed them herself.
Good
And
for her.
yeah, so
So
then
what
my
happened?
parents dabbled in it as well.
Yeah.
And
Okay. So she started it, and then your parents. What happened to all of her properties when she passed?
as she got older, and she wanted life to slow down, she sold off the properties, and then invested in other, like stocks and bonds and
Right.
things like
Yeah.
that.
Safer. So, well,
Yep.
less management intensive, right? Yeah.
Less management intensive, more just kind of asset preservation type things.
Right.
And then the ones that she owned outright, she just continued to manage. And then my parents, as she got older, my parents came in and helped manage them. And then some of the properties were divided within her estate, when
Right.
she did pass. And then, some went to my uncle, some went to my aunt, and then my parents. So
That's amazing. So tell us about the first time you made an investment in real estate. That wasn't
yes.
that wasn't a primary home.
Oh, that wasn't a private. Oh my gosh, this is a great story. So we were living in Columbus, Georgia at the time because my husband was stationed, um, at was Fort Benning at the time, and we had just bought a house, we had just moved into it, and we wanted to redo the floors. So while my husband was at work, I started ripping out the carpet because this is what I do, right? And I was like, wow, these hardwood floors are fantastic. Let's refinish them. And this is going to be a DIY project. Um, so I got to the dining room floor and pulled back the carpet, and there was just no way that it can be redone. So I hired someone to redo the carpet, redo all the floors in the house. And of course, this was like 3 months after we moved in, right? Which is a terrible time to like move everything around and redo the floors. So we had to be out of the house for an entire week, and it was summertime. So I said, well, let's go to Florida for the week. We'll just rent an Airbnb, and then the kids can swim, we can relax. And really, it's the only time that we're going to get kind of a vacation. So while we were there, I was scrolling through houses, and I found this cute little 2 bedroom, 1 bath bungalow that looked terrible. I mean, it was ugly. It just looked like a monster house, but it was in a fantastic location for $75,000. And this
What
is
city? What city?
Columbus, Georgia.
No.
And
Oh, you found it while you were in Florida, but you were
yeah, while I
looking
was in
back.
Florida, I was looking.
I
Yeah.
thought you were looking at houses in Florida. Okay.
Oh, yeah. No, not at the time.
That's
We hadn't
Columbus.
started Florida
Okay.
yet. Um, so I called our realtor, who also became a friend, and said, I'd really like to look at this house. And of course, my husband at the time was like, we just bought a house. We we are like in the middle of remodeling it. Like, I don't know if now's the time. And I was like, no, now is the time. This place is adorable and it hasn't been lived in 6 years. So when we got back from Florida, my husband went back to work, and I met my realtor Lisa, and her husband Bob, who is a general contractor, came over to the house to look at it. And so I got Bob's opinion as to like, okay, what is it going to take to get this rent ready, um, and how much is it going to cost, ballpark. And then of course with Lisa, I was like, well, how much can I offer? It's been vacant for 6 years, um, but it is near the park, which is a popular area. So we put an offer in on it, and I said, well, okay, let's do it. She's like, do you think you should call Jason? And I was like, oh no, he'll be on board. So I called Jason that night and I said,
We made an offer.
we bought a house. And he was like, what do you mean we bought a house? I was like, we bought that little bungalow. And he was like, what? And because we were paying cash for it, I was like, yeah, it's going to be ours in 2 weeks. And he was like, what? Wait, what? I was like, this is the perfect time, the perfect house, the perfect location. It just needs, it needs some paint. It needs some new countertops. It needs,
How much did you offer and what did you end up settling on?
so it's actually listed for 78,500. We offered 72,000 and got it. And we put about 12,000 into it. Painting, new countertops, insulation, some bathroom remodeling.
With Bob.
With
Bob
Bob,
did it all.
Bob the builder helped us. And and of course, because they also had investment properties around that area, I said, how much do you think I can get for it a month? And he said, I think about 750. Well, I ended up getting 995 and rented it to a military family. And so we had military families renting it. And it was fantastic. And I just raised the rent a little bit, each time we had new tenants in there. And yeah, it was a fantastic little rental property. And my only regret is we sold it.
Oh, yeah.
It was my only regret. And
how many do you have now? Like, is that what you do? Do you invest in single family homes or what's your investment criteria now?
Yeah. So in the past, we have bought homes with the VA loan as primary residences, and then we've turned them into rentals when we move because we move every 2 years, sometimes every year. So it was a fantastic opportunity to get in at zero down with a primary interest rate. And then, we've done fix and flips, fix and rents, a little bit of everything. But that was our criteria. So at one point we had 6. And then we scaled down. Columbus, Georgia is a fantastic, steady market, but there's not a lot of appreciation.
Right.
And we had 2 older properties. So when opportunities came to sell them, we sold them, and then we used that money to invest in higher appreciating markets. And so now we are in Tampa, Florida, and DuPont, Washington, which is part of the Tacoma area. And so now we're down to 4 properties. And then we've also been investing in storage facilities with Lauren Roethlisberger.
As a limited partner.
As a limited partner, yes, because she's the subject matter expert when it comes to storage facilities, and I am not. And she is my trusted mentor, trusted investor, like everything.
It's great. So my core asset is retail. So I buy shopping centers. And last year, about 2 years ago, I had 7. I've sold 3. So I have now 4. But I invest with a woman, Natasha, who's spoken at my conference in multifamily. So she was buying 6 units, 8 units. And then I challenged her at the conference to go bigger. And now she's buying 45 units. So so I'm investing with her as an LP. And I always tease her, or I always say, I love giving a check and getting a check, right? Because the work is, as long as you trust the jockey.
Yes.
And you understand, I can read through her deck. I can understand her strategy and her business plan. I trust her.
Yes.
It's great to be the passive investor because I'm busy over here doing a $2 million renovation on my shopping center. I can't have 5 of those. There's only one of me to go around.
Yes. No, I truly believe that having trusted partners allow you to scale in ways that you couldn't do, and allow you to enter different asset classes.
Right.
That it's the time money balance, right? By the time and the lessons learned, I would have to
learn a new asset class,
endure, and how many years would that take me where I can invest with Lauren, and then again, it creates other opportunities that I otherwise wouldn't jump into. right?
So what was your grandmother's name?
So she went by Smokey. Everyone knew her as Smokey. She was from Arkansas, but her name was Imodine, which is such a Southern name.
Okay,
but everyone knew her.
I'm going to go with Smokey. So Smokey starts, your parents jump in, you're doing it. So my big question is, have you indoctrinated the girls yet, the daughters?
Yes. So actually, my 16-year-old is actually interning in my office this summer. So she is learning the lending side of it, because that is a big part of it, and then also the sales side of it, right? Because I feel like everything in life revolves around sales and presenting yourself, presenting your service, and if you learn how to sell and you learn how to structure a deal, it starts small, but I mean, that's the thing. You have to start small, start somewhere, and then you learn and then you can just keep getting bigger and bigger as you go. So,
well, I hope you come to the conference and bring the girls.
Yes. Oh my gosh, absolutely. And my other daughter, she's 22, and she's very entrepreneurial minded. Like a lot of ADHD people are very entrepreneurial minded.
What is she doing?
And so she actually graduated from culinary school. And so she is, right now, she is working on building her business concept for meals for active duty service members that are training for, certain schools or training for certain physicals, so that she will create meals that meet their, and I'm going to butcher this because I don't know much about this, but their nutritional needs for endurance and building muscle. And it's like a food meal service is what
she should. So tell her to reach out to Jesse Itzler. Jesse Itzler. He's the husband of Sarah Blakely, who owns Spanx.
Oh, yeah, I know who she is.
Okay. And Jesse does a lot of endurance challenges, and he has chefs come into his house, or they come to the events. And your daughter could, once she gets this off and running, she could say, hey, I'm happy to bring some of my meals to your next, Running Man festival or whatever. Yes, so and then once he's bought in and likes the product, the business could take off.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's funny because the idea came about that, she's 22. We live in a very military centric area. So typically when she goes on dates, they're in the military. And so, they're often like athletes. I mean, very much so. These kind of special operations soldiers are very into their fitness and their macros and protein.
Right.
Yeah.
She should
so it's kind of funny how it's.
So Jesse had a guy that he wrote a book called Living with a SEAL, and this guy, David Goggins, who is.
I've heard of David Goggins for sure. Yeah, he's definitely the endurance.
Exactly. Well, we're coming to the end. So let me ask you, what advice would you give to someone who is interested in investing, but is not sure, maybe has a little fear? Like what advice would you give to someone that is thinking about putting their toe in the water?
I would definitely say be bold and reach out to a mentor. Find a mentor. LinkedIn is one of my favorite places to find mentors, and reach out. You just have to let someone know who you are, what you want to learn, and ask them to be your mentor. It's really that easy. And you may get some no's, but you will get a yes. And learning from that mentor, and then starting small and really making it a priority. Stop spending money on stupid stuff, as I say. And
I say stop. No purses, properties. Buy properties instead of purses.
Buy properties. Like nobody cares really the fashion that you're wearing, the purse that you're wearing. And I would much rather be receiving checks from an asset than having a fancy purse or a super fancy car or whatever. There's time for that later down the road.
With the distributions, I say use the distributions to buy the purses.
Yes. And guess what? Receiving checks is is the goal.
Exactly.
Receiving checks and not,
Exactly.
So yes, find a mentor. I think that is number one. And I mean, it's something that even if you're an introvert, it does putting yourself out there on nobody's going to see that you're putting yourself out there on LinkedIn and connecting with mentors and saying, this is what I would like to do. I see that you're doing it. What is some advice for me? Do you mentor others? And I have always, even if I haven't received a mentor, I've received a nugget. Oh, follow this person, watch this podcast, read this book, and just get started. And you'll find that once you start saying that this is what you want to learn, people will give you advice. They'll say, this is a great book that I read. This is how I got started. And learning from others is really,
that's amazing. Yeah. I think I've interviewed, I'm over 20, maybe 20 to 25 women. So if women want to invest, they can watch these podcasts and then reach out to these women. If someone reached out to you, I'm sure you would help them, right?
Oh my gosh. And I have conversations all the time. It's typically with military spouses. And that's how Lauren and I got connected, is that we were both investing in real estate and renting out houses. And then people were sending, friends of ours were saying, hey, someone asked about this and asked about buying homes and renting them. Would you mind having a conversation with them? And so Lauren and I were constantly having conversations with other military spouses. And then we're like, let's write a book. Oh, let's write a second book. Oh, let's start a network of military spouses. So it's, that's how things.
So you have a book? You guys have books?
So funny. We actually co-wrote 2 books, and they're digital books. They're on the gomilly.com website now. We started a business called Military Property Project. And our first book was, how do you capitalize on this military lifestyle and buy homes with the intent of renting them out? How do you find the homes? How do you finance the homes? How do you decide what's a good home and what's not a good home to turn into a rental? And then how do you rinse and repeat? And our concept was, your active duty, service member, husband or wife, is your wage earner. And with all of these moves, it makes it hard to have a regular career. So turn yourself into the wealth builder.
Amazing.
Right? You're kind of the default parent. It's
and
hard
the VA mortgage and taking advantage of the VA mortgage, right?
VA mortgage is the best thing out there. And I didn't realize even how great it was until I became a lender. Yeah. And then I've seen the other loan products. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is the best rates, the best, you're getting in for sometimes less than you would pay for a rent deposit, first month's rent, and pet deposit. So it creates a huge opportunity. And then the second book we wrote was, now that you have this property, how are you going to rent it? How are you going to determine your fair market rent? How are you going to manage it? We created calculations to help them decide. Oh, so I mean, it just, and it was just the 2 of us. It was
so if there's a military spouse watching this, how do they get a hold of your books?
Oh, so they can go to gomilly.com and go to the toolkits. And
they know what, I presume they know what that is?
Yes. And if they don't, it's gomillie.com. Okay. Go to the toolkit section. And so we sold that business and started another business with 2 other veterans who created an agent. It's called Agent Hero. It's like an agent network, referral network for military families when you don't know how to find a realtor.
So now back to your current job as a lender, what do you lend on?
Mostly it's all residential. So, I mean, everything from condominiums to, construction loans.
Only in the Northwest?
No, actually, I am licensed in Washington, Florida, and Georgia. However, I work directly on my branch manager's team. So since I work on his team, I can lend in California, Oregon, Washington, Texas, Idaho, Arizona.
Okay, so if anyone is buying residential, they can reach out to you
Yes.
for a loan.
Oh, yes, please do. Yes,
Awesome.
absolutely.
Amy, it's been such a pleasure. And please thank Jason on behalf of our network for his service and your family's support to his service.
Thank
And
you.
I hope I see you in March in Florida.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, absolutely. I am so excited for it. And thank you again for inviting me on your podcast just to share what we've done, over the years. And if it inspires someone, and someone wants to reach out to me, I am always happy to jump on a call and share my resources and what I've done and how I do things.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And God bless your family and your husband.
Likewise. Thank you so much, Beth. Have a great night.